You are not living more luxuriously, but you are paying more for the same life, the same supermarket, the same breakfast, the same shopping cart. But the bill is no longer like last year. In the past few years, beef at times was more than 50% higher. Eggs once rose 60 to 100% in just a few months. Retail coffee increased nearly 20% in 1 year. And what matters is not that they went up. It is that they did not come back down. Modern crises do not empty the shelves first. They make the familiar price disappear first. You do not see an out-of-stock sign. You just see yourself starting to hesitate in front of items you once bought without thinking. And when multiple foundational foods rise at the same time, protein, starches, fruit, beverages, that is no longer an isolated fluctuation. It is the structure of the meal being adjusted. Prices do not need an announcement. They just shift. And when you realize that, calm has become more expensive. In the next few minutes, we will look at 10 specific items facing real pressure. No speculation, no sensationalism, just data, costs, and the math of the system. If you think this has not affected you yet, wait until the first item, 10, canned beef. Beef has increased more than 70%, and as of February 2026, it still has not turned back. Beef roasts are about 73% higher than before the pandemic, beef steaks more than 57%, and ground beef exceeds 50%. This is no longer a short-term shock. This is the new price level. And when an essential item rises at that scale without returning to its starting point, it says more than any economic news report. Think back to a can of beef a few years ago. You may have bought it for $2.99. Today, the same can, on the same shelf, may be $4.49 or $4.89. The number did not inch up step by step. It jumped. Behind that price are droughts reducing cattle herds, feed costs rising with grains, more expensive fuel and transportation, higher labor and operating expenses. When supply tightens while production costs climb, prices have no reason to fall sharply again. Then the domino effect begins. When fresh beef becomes too expensive, consumers do not stop buying beef. They shift to processed meat. They choose canned beef because they believe it is cheaper. But when millions of households make that same choice, demand for canned meat rises, and canned meat prices rise with it. Fresh beef increases push canned beef up, and when canned beef increases, there is no fallback option left behind. For a 68-year-old living on a fixed income, an extra dollar per can is not a statistic. It is recalculating the week's meals. It is deciding to buy less meat or less of something else. Inflation is not loud, it just stays. Canned beef is not a luxury. Precisely because it is basic, it hits the household bill directly. It is dense protein, high calories, food that can sit on a shelf for years without electricity. And when an item has risen more than 50% and still holds that level into February 2026, the question is no longer how much it has increased. The question is whether it will be cheaper next year. History shows that food prices after major shocks rarely return to the past. They simply establish a new normal. And when the new normal forms, consumers no longer choose between cheap and expensive. They only choose to pay more. 9. Freeze-dried coffee. As of February 2026, coffee prices in the United States remain significantly higher than before 2020. During many periods in 2024 and 2025, retail coffee increased nearly 20% within just 1 year. And what surprised many people is that this new price level did not fully cool down after the shock increases. You may remember a jar of freeze-dried coffee that once cost $6.99. Today, that same size may be $8.99 or $9.49. Not an increase of a few cents, but enough for you to look twice at the receipt. Coffee is not rising because you drink more of it. It is rising because weather in Brazil, the largest coffee-producing country in the world, has faced repeated droughts and unusual frosts in recent years. When production falls, the market reacts. On top of that are higher international shipping costs and currency fluctuations that make imports more expensive. Coffee is a global commodity. When one major growing region has problems, a few months later, you see the change on your local shelf. But coffee is not just numbers. A 65-year-old viewer once left a comment. "I can cut back on many things, but do not take away my morning coffee." The sentence sounds simple, but it reflects something very real. Coffee is not a survival food. You can live without it. But for many people over 50, coffee is the rhythm that starts the day. It is a familiar feeling in a world changing quickly. Freeze-dried coffee is even more practical in this context. It is light, durable, does not require a complicated machine, does not depend on a stable power source. A small jar can last for weeks. When a global commodity has shown an increase of nearly 20% in 1 year and still holds a high level into February 2026, the question is no longer whether it can fluctuate. The question is whether you want to pay more for the same cup of coffee in the coming months. There are things that are not necessary for survival, but without them, life no longer feels the same. 8. Eggs. There was a period not long ago when egg prices in the United States nearly doubled within just a few months. During the avian flu outbreak, many places saw increases of 60%, even reaching 100%. A dozen eggs that once cost $1.50 or $2 at times jumped to $4, even $5. And although prices later cooled somewhat, they did not return to their previous levels. As of early 2026, the egg market remains sensitive to supply and production costs. Eggs did not rise because you eat more of them. They rose because supply is more fragile than you think. When millions of hens are culled due to disease, the supply chain reacts almost immediately. And it only takes one new outbreak for prices to jump within weeks. This is not theory. We have seen it happen. Eggs are the most basic food in the kitchen. Breakfast, the quickest meal when you do not want to cook anything complicated. An ingredient in hundreds of recipes. That is why when egg prices rise, you do not need to read the news to know. You feel it at the checkout counter, because this is something you buy every week. I remember a story about a couple in their 70s living on a fixed pension. They always bought a dozen eggs each week as a habit for many years. One morning, the husband stood in front of the shelf, picked up the carton, then put it down, then picked it up again. Not because he could not afford it, but because he had never imagined having to hesitate over a dozen eggs. Eggs used to be the cheapest thing, he said. If even eggs have risen like this, what will happen to everything else? When a basic food can rise 60 to 100% in a short period of time, you have to admit that stability is not guaranteed. And if you want to track food fluctuations like this calmly, based on data rather than rumors, subscribe to the channel so we can stay updated regularly together. Eggs used to be a symbol of cheap and stable food. When even eggs become expensive, you know everything has changed. Do you remember the first time you stood in front of the shelf and realized egg prices had doubled? 7. Butter. There is something interesting about butter. You rarely think about it until its price changes. You do not go to the supermarket just to buy butter, but you need it to bake, to pan-sear, to sauté vegetables, to spread on warm bread. It is not the main dish, but it stands behind hundreds of main dishes. And that is why when butter prices rise, you are not just paying more for a small piece of butter. You are paying more for the entire system behind it. In recent years, especially after supply chain disruptions and higher energy costs, butter prices have risen under pressure from the dairy industry. Livestock feed became more expensive. Electricity and fuel for farms became more expensive. Production and transportation costs became higher. Butter is not an independent product. It is the concentrated essence of milk. When input costs for milk rise, butter reacts almost immediately. Butter is not a luxury, but when it increases in price, everything behind it rises with it. Bakeries adjust their prices. Bread, cookies, pastries inch upward. Restaurants change their menus. Dishes you do not think are connected to butter quietly become more expensive. That is the ripple effect many people overlook. A small ingredient can affect the entire food chain behind it. For many families, especially older generations, butter is not just fat. It is the familiar flavor of the kitchen. It is what makes a dish taste right. And when such a foundational ingredient fluctuates, you do not just change your bill. You change the way you cook. The difference between butter and beef or eggs is that you can act in advance. Butter can be frozen for many months while maintaining its quality. That makes it one of the few items you can buy ahead before the next price adjustment happens. When all input costs in the dairy industry remain elevated into early 2026, the question is not whether butter can fluctuate. The question is whether you still think butter is just a small piece of fat in the kitchen, or the quiet link in the entire food system behind it. Food does not rise because you are afraid. It rises because costs rise, and those costs rarely return to previous levels. 6. Canned salmon. There is a very clear pattern in the food market. When red meat becomes too expensive, people do not stop eating protein. They shift, and that direction is often fish. Salmon was once seen as a more premium option than regular fish, yet healthier than beef. When beef prices rose more than 50% in recent years, many families began looking toward the seafood counter. Not because of a change in taste, but because of a change in the bill. The issue is that salmon is not as simple as you think. It depends on fuel for fishing vessels. When diesel prices rise, every trip offshore becomes more expensive. It depends on catch quotas. Governments control supply to protect natural resources. When quotas tighten, supply drops immediately. And it also depends on exports. Salmon does not serve only the US market. It is a global commodity. When international demand increases, domestic prices cannot remain still. Salmon does not face pressure only from costs. It faces pressure from global competition. That means when red meat becomes expensive and millions of people shift to fish at the same time, you are not the only one making that decision. And the market reacts in a very predictable way. Prices edge up. But canned salmon has a strategic difference. It lasts a long time. It does not require a freezer. It does not depend on electricity. A small can sit on a shelf for years and still retain its nutritional value. For people over 50, omega-3 is not a minor detail. It is directly connected to heart health and brain function. High-quality protein is not just about feeling full. It is about maintaining muscle over time. Once you pass 60, protein deficiency is no longer about eating less. It is about long-term health. And when a food is both a substitute for red meat, nutritionally valuable, and shelf-stable, its demand pressure is not small. The question is not whether salmon will increase in price. The question is, if red meat continues to stay expensive, do you think fish will hold its current price forever? Have you already started replacing beef with fish in your meals? 5. Whole milk powder. 3 days without power. Fresh milk runs out first. Your body does not. We are used to opening the refrigerator and seeing a carton of milk there. It is always there, week after week. But fresh milk is one of the most system-dependent foods in the kitchen. It requires a continuous cold chain. It requires trucks on time. It requires supermarkets operating steadily. It only takes one link to slow down for you to start worrying. Fresh milk depends on the system. Powdered milk does not. Whole milk powder can sit quietly on a shelf for years if kept dry and sealed. It does not need electricity. It does not need refrigeration. It does not need to be repurchased every week. In a context where energy and operating costs in the dairy industry remain high into early 2026, dependence becomes a silent risk. But this is not only a supply chain story. This is a biology story. After age 60, muscle mass can decline about 1 to 2% per year if protein intake is insufficient. At the same time, the body absorbs protein less efficiently than when younger. That means you need a more stable protein source, not a more irregular one. Bone density also decreases over time. A fall at this age is no longer a small matter. The body does not operate according to the supermarket bill. It operates according to time. Cutting milk because prices rise may save you a few dollars this week. But muscle loss and bone loss do not send a bill in advance. They accumulate silently. Whole milk powder is not a luxury item. It is protein, fat, and calcium in a controllable form. You mix it when needed. Use as much as you want. It does not spoil because you forgot it in the refrigerator. It does not depend on your next trip to the supermarket. At this age, what is most valuable is not cheap. It is not having to depend. Supermarkets can close early because of a storm. Transportation chains can slow down. Prices can edge up another 15 to 20%. But your body still has to get up every morning. If the system pauses for a few weeks, do you have enough protein and calcium so you do not have to think about it? 4. Canned tomatoes. You do not open a can of tomatoes to eat it directly. But if tomatoes fluctuate, your entire kitchen changes. Tomatoes are not the main dish. They are the base. And when the base shakes, everything above it shakes with it. Most processed tomatoes in the United States are concentrated in California. When production is concentrated in a single region, risk is concentrated as well. Prolonged drought, higher than normal temperatures, water restrictions tightening. It only takes 1 week harvest for the entire chain behind it to react. And tomatoes are not just a crop. They are an industrial ingredient. They must be harvested at the right time. They must be brought into factories immediately during the season. They must be processed in large volumes. When energy, labor, or transportation costs rise, the impact is not at the produce counter, but in every processed product behind it. Tomatoes do not disappear from the shelf. They disappear from the old price level. A viewer once wrote under a previous video, "I only realized there was a problem when pizza and soup prices increased. I never thought the cause could start with tomatoes." That is how the system works. You do not see the cause. You only see the result. A small can of tomatoes can open the door to 3 or 4 meals. It turns rice into a sauced dish, turns dry pasta into a meal, turns a small amount of ground meat into something flavorful. It is the catalyst of the kitchen, and there is something rarely mentioned. The natural acidity of tomatoes helps them remain safely preserved for years in a can. Few ingredients are both a culinary foundation and a long-term storage food in that way. In times of economic volatility, people do not only fear a lack of meat, they fear meals becoming monotonous. Tomatoes keep meals colorful, still flavorful, still familiar. Crop failures are not loud, but the bill is. A small can, but positioned between climate, industry, and the family kitchen. If water supplies continue to tighten and production costs continue to rise, are you certain foundational ingredients like this will hold stable prices in the coming years? In your kitchen right now, how many meals could begin with just one can of tomatoes? 3. Lentils. Not every crisis begins with empty shelves. Sometimes it begins with a very small change in the shopping cart. Less meat, more of something else. When meat prices rose sharply in recent years, people did not stop eating protein. They simply changed how they got it. And one of the first foods to quietly step into that gap was lentils. Lentils are not flashy, not heavily advertised, not placed at the center of the supermarket. But when beef, chicken, and fish begin to pressure the household budget, demand for plant protein rises with it. Meat decreases in the cart. Lentils increase. That is not a vegetarian trend. That is household math. Lentils have an advantage that many other legumes do not. They cook quickly. No need to soak overnight. No need for much energy. High in protein. High in fiber, and if kept dry, they can last for years without electricity or a cold chain. In a context of volatile energy and food costs, foods that cook quickly, store long, and remain flexible become a strategy. A viewer once shared, "I started mixing lentils into ground meat. My family did not notice, but the bill did." That sentence sounds simple, but it reflects what is happening in millions of kitchens. Restructuring the meal. When many families look for a cheaper solution at the same time, that solution also begins to face pressure. Lentils do not spike like beef, but they rise when substitute demand rises. Protein does not disappear. It simply changes form. And when the meat system faces drought, feed costs, transportation, and labor pressures, do you think plant protein will remain outside that cycle forever? If one day you had to reduce meat by 30% in your meals without reducing nutrition, do you already have a plan ready in your kitchen? 2. Canned pineapple. Canned pineapple does not rise in price because it suddenly becomes rare. It rises because it stands in the middle of too many layers of risk. Pineapple is not a crop widely grown in the United States. Most of it comes from tropical countries such as the Philippines, Thailand, and Costa Rica. That means every can of pineapple you hold has crossed an ocean, and the ocean is not free. Shipping fuel rises, container costs rise, port fees rise. All of it adds up before it reaches the shelf. Imported fruit often reacts to fuel prices faster than you think. But the story does not stop at transportation. Canned pineapple is not simply fresh fruit placed into a can. It must be cut, processed, packaged, sterilized, run through industrial lines. When energy costs rise, factories raise costs. When metal costs rise, can prices rise? You are not just paying for the pineapple, you are paying for its container. Some items rise in price because they are rare. Some rise because they are complex. Pineapple belongs to the second group, and there is another layer rarely discussed: currency. When exporting countries adjust prices according to exchange rate fluctuations, importers must adjust as well. Consumers only see the final number. Tropical climates are not as stable as before. Heavy rain, storms, El Niño. It only takes one reduced harvest season for global supply to tighten. Because production is concentrated in a few countries, Risk is concentrated as well. But what makes pineapple worth discussing is not only economics. At age 50 and beyond, vitamin C is no longer a minor detail. Immune function, recovery, digestion, all require steady support. And during periods of economic strain, a bit of natural sweetness can change the feeling of an entire meal. A crisis does not make you hungry first. It makes you tired first. A meal may have enough calories, but if it lacks color, lacks fruit flavor, lacks a sense of familiar comfort, morale begins to wear down. A small can of pineapple will not save the economy, but it can keep the kitchen from becoming harsh. Without protein, you weaken. Without morale, you break. And when a small food item depends on global shipping, energy, metal, currency, and climate at the same time, do you think its current price is guaranteed? In your kitchen right now, how many things not only nourish the body, but also keep you from feeling like you are living in instability? 1. Canned coconut water. Not every fluctuation begins in the market. Some begin with the weather. In recent years, average temperatures have risen, heat waves have lasted longer, and summer power outages are no longer rare. When the power system is overloaded, the first thing that disappears is not food. It is stability. And during prolonged hot days, the body does not need only calories. It needs electrolytes. The non-alcoholic beverage category has risen significantly in price in recent years. From shipping costs, bottling, to packaging and energy. But coconut water holds a special position within that group. It is not just a drink. It contains natural electrolytes, potassium, sodium, minerals that support fluid balance in the body. When dehydration occurs, especially after age 50, the body reacts more slowly and recovers more slowly. A 24-hour power outage may only cause discomfort. A 72-hour outage in peak heat is a different story. A viewer once shared after a summer blackout. I was not worried about running out of food. I was worried about not having something that kept me from collapsing. That sentence reflects what many people do not think about. In a crisis, you do not fall because you lack meat. You fall because you lose balance. Canned coconut water has an advantage. Long shelf life, no refrigeration needed before opening, and ready to use when necessary. No mixing, no preparation. And there is another layer. Tropical climates where coconuts are grown are also affected by weather volatility. When production is impacted and shipping costs rise, prices do not remain still. Some foods keep you full. Some foods keep you stable. As temperatures rise, the power grid becomes more fragile, and transportation costs remain high. Do you think electrolyte-supporting products will stay as affordable as before? In your kitchen right now, if the power goes out for 3 days in the middle of summer, have you prepared enough to keep your body balanced? A 70-year-old man once told me, "I do not stockpile because I am afraid of running out. I stockpile because I know prices will not return." He is not trying to profit. He is simply avoiding paying more later. You do not need to buy a full cart. Just look again. 10 items you are certain you will use in the next 6 months. If their prices rise another 15 to 20%, will you regret not buying earlier? Prices do not announce themselves. They simply change. And by the time you realize it, the only option left is to pay more.